Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Rebecca Rand.
In our top story, a Jewish guard was killed and 2 Danish police officers wounded when a Muslim terrorist attempted to infiltrate a synagogue in Copenhagen last week. 37-year-old Dan Uzan was murdered as he stood between a crazed Islamic gunman and a synagogue filled with Jews celebrating a bat mitzvah. The attacker, Omar El-Hussein, who had been released from a Danish prison just weeks before, was later killed in a shootout that left 2 Danish police officers wounded. The city of Copenhagen was already on high alert after El-Hussein earlier in the day opened fire at a debate on free speech at a local cafe, killing 1 innocent bystander. He was apparently hunting an artist who had drawn a caricature of Mohammed. The artist, who says his life has been threatened by Muslims around the world since his cartoon was published, has been placed in protective custody for his own safety. El-Hussein then targeted the Great Synagogue of Copenhagen in hopes of killing as many Jews as possible. Israel's Foreign Minister, Avigdor Lieberman, released a statement saying the series of terror events in Copenhagen proves that Israel and the Jews are targets because they are on the front line in the terrorist war that is being waged by Islamic radicals against the West and the entire world. The Israeli diplomat added that the international community must do more than make declarations and demonstrations against this terrorism. It needs to shake off the rules of political correctness and fight a real all-out war against Islamic terror and its roots. The recent wave of Islamic terror attacks has rocked Jewish communities throughout Europe, and insult was added to injury when U.S. President Barack Obama stated that the recent attack on a kosher market in Paris did not specifically target Jews. Rebecca has more on that story.
Yes, Yochanan, Jews and Christians all over the world were shocked when the President of the United States insinuated that the Islamic terror attack against a kosher supermarket in France was not anti-Semitic in nature. In what can only be interpreted as an attempt to downplay the malicious agenda of radical Islam against Jews, U.S. President Barack Obama called the slaughter of 4 Jews in a kosher grocery store random. After receiving pressure from numerous organizations, the White House quietly retracted the statement.
A French anti-terror task force has arrested a Muslim man for threatening the lives of a parliament member in Paris, as well as the Israeli consul in Marseille. The suspect allegedly sent videos of ISIS beheadings to the men and threatened that they would meet the same fate. French Member of Parliament Meir Haviv, who was targeted because he is Jewish, notified French authorities, who compared the threat to similar ones received by the Israeli consulate. They determined that the threats were concrete and specific, and the case was transferred to the anti-terror unit, which launched an investigation resulting in the arrest. If convicted, the man, identified as Amin, will face up to 5 years in prison. His Muslim family claimed to be shocked at the accusations against him, despite his recent obsession with al-Qaeda and jihad.
The president of Argentina has been formally accused of covering up Iran's involvement in the 1994 bombing of the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires. This comes just weeks after the main prosecutor for the case, Alberto Nisman, was found murdered in his apartment hours before he was set to testify on evidence he had uncovered, which implicated President Cristina Kirchner. The state prosecutor, who succeeded Nisman, accepted his findings that Kirchner did in fact conceal the involvement of high-ranking Iranian officials in the bombing, which killed 85 people and injured hundreds. She is accused of collaborating with the terrorists in exchange for Iranian oil. Argentina is home to the largest Jewish community in Latin America, and this scandal, which reaches the upper echelons of the Argentinian government, has devastated the Jewish community there.
The Egyptian Air Force has bombed Islamic State targets in Libya after the terror group published a video of the beheading of 21 Egyptian Christians. Egypt declared a week of mourning for the Christian victims, who were all members of the Coptic Church, which represents the oldest Christian community in the Middle East. Standing on the shores of Libya, just 500 miles from Italy, the narrator of the video speaks in English, saying that ISIS is planning to conquer Rome. The ISIS spokesman addressed the Christians around the world as crusaders and said, "We swear to Allah that we will mix your blood into the sea where you have hidden the body of Sheikh Osama bin Laden."
Iranians marked the 36th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution by screaming for Israel's destruction. Iranian state television broadcast a celebration which showed thousands of people standing in the streets of Tehran, holding signs and chanting death to Israel and America. Despite clearly stating that their goal is to destroy Israel, the United States is moving forward with what has been rumored to be the most dangerous concessions to date since the start of the nuclear negotiations with Iran. This comes as more Israelis and Americans have lost faith in the Obama administration's ability to keep Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. Yochanan has more on that.
Yes, Rebecca, a majority of Israelis believe that U.S. President Barack Obama cannot be trusted to keep Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, even as the White House moves toward making a disastrous deal with the hardline Islamic country. 74% of Israelis polled do not believe that Obama will prevent Iran from creating the bomb. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is preparing to address a joint session of Congress regarding the nuclear deal. This, as another recent poll shows, that 58% of Americans feel that Obama should meet with Netanyahu when he is in Washington. The survey was conducted by the London-based YouGov market research firm. This diplomatic crisis has already caused a strain in Israeli-American relations. Last week, senior officials in the Obama administration allegedly told Israeli media sources that in light of the Prime Minister's planned speech to Congress against the president's wishes, the Obama administration would cease to update Israel on the Iranian nuclear negotiations. U.S. officials have since denied the claims, and Israel Television Channel 2, which broke the story, has also had to backtrack on the report. Nevertheless, there is no doubt the current administration is angry at Israel for opposing the concessions the White House is willing to make on Iran's rogue nuclear weapons program.
The Syrian resistance is asking for Israel's help. Syrian rebels have reportedly contacted the Jewish state asking that Israel assist them by attacking Hezbollah and Iranian forces in Syria. According to Israeli news reports, a Druze informant has been a messenger between the members of the Free Syrian Army and members of the Israeli defense establishment. This messenger has reportedly relayed the locations of Hezbollah and Iranian army strongholds, as well as a request for them to hit them hard. These Syrian rebels, who claim to desire friendly relations with Israel, warned of an assault of Hezbollah and Syrian government forces on the Golan region. The group reportedly asked the IDF to attack this advancement before they are able to take this strategic location, which borders both Israel and Jordan.
Numerous Israeli officials have confirmed that the European Union is threatening Israel with sanctions if peace talks with the Palestinians are not resumed. The sanctions are very one-sided and only penalize Israel and companies which operate in Judea and Samaria. In fact, the plan calls to support the Palestinians' legal proceedings and proposes to create a Palestinian state through the UN Security Council. Israel's economy minister, Naftali Bennett, told a delegation of EU members that Israel will not place itself in danger just to avoid sanctions. Bennett went on to say that it is immoral to single out Israel and to twist our arms economically in hopes that we'll commit suicide.
The Israeli Navy intercepted a boat full of weapons en route to the Gaza Strip last week. Lieutenant Colonel Liav Zilberman released a statement saying that the 916th Company thwarts smuggling attempts like this one almost weekly. 3 Palestinians were arrested during the seizure, and according to Shin Bet, they admitted that the liquid fiberglass found on the boat was intended for manufacturing mortars and rockets in the Hamas-held enclave. Last summer, Israel was forced to engage Hamas after the terrorist organization fired hundreds of rockets into Israeli cities, threatening the lives of thousands of Israeli civilians living in southern Israel.
The Israeli defense establishment bid farewell to Lieutenant General Benny Gantz, who officially retired last week. Gantz served the Jewish state as IDF Chief of Staff from 2011 and commanded the Army through 2 offensive operations in the Gaza Strip. In a meeting before Gantz officially stepped down from his position as the 20th Chief of the General Staff, he met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who thanked him for his long years of service to the country. Major General Gadi Eisenkot was chosen to succeed Gantz and was promoted to Lieutenant General. The incoming and outgoing Chiefs of Staff met at the Western Wall to pray last week before heading to the residence of Israeli President Reuven Rivlin for the official changing of the guard ceremony. Netanyahu welcomed the 54-year-old Eisenkot, but stressed that the Middle East is falling apart. The Prime Minister said countries are collapsing, and in their space the Iranian Empire is growing and seeking to arm itself with nuclear weapons. Netanyahu added that he believes the next 4 years will be even more difficult than the previous 4, but that he, the Jewish people, and the State of Israel have faith in Eisenkot to successfully do the job of IDF Chief of Staff.
Israel has been ranked the 5th most innovative country in the world by the prestigious Bloomberg Innovation Index. In a huge improvement over last year, the Jewish state jumped 25 places in the index, which ranks nations by their performance in technical education, patents, research and development, and other technical criteria. The Jewish state beat out France, Singapore, the UK, and the United States in the overall rankings this year. And in the field of GDP expenditure on research, the Jewish state ranked number 2 in the world.
We are sad to report that 4-year-old Adele Biton has passed away. Adele had been fighting for her life since Palestinian terrorists pelted her car with rocks 2 years ago. Her mother and her 4- and 5-year-old sisters were also wounded in the crash caused by the terrorist attack. Despite numerous operations, treatments, and therapy, Adele's fight to survive ended last week. We at Israel Now News send our condolences to the Biton family and pray that God will give them comfort.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here once again in a beautiful day on our rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Edgar Lefkowitz, former Jerusalem Post correspondent and political analyst. Edgar, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Josh. Great to be here.
Edgar, everyone has election fever. It's in all the newspapers, on all the sites in Israel. Everyone can't stop talking about it. But is there any excitement really here, or is it just going to be Bibi's going to be the prime minister again, like always?
Well, as always, there's a lot of suspense just before the elections, and until the last minute, we probably won't know what will happen. The race, according to the polls, is close, but most people think that Prime Minister Netanyahu will pull through at the end. But, you know, polls can be fickle, so we'll have to see. And of course, even if there's just some weeks before the election, that's a long time in Israel, as always.
Who's the main challenger to Bibi? What are the polls predicting right now?
So right now, his main challenger is his former Justice Minister, Tzipi Livni, who's joined together with the head of the center-left Labour Party, Bougie Herzog. That party poses the biggest challenge to Netanyahu, but the point is they're going to have a tremendous difficulty forming any possible coalition, whereas for him, it'll be much easier to form a coalition government.
Yeah, because we're in a parliamentary system, so not only does he have to get more votes, he actually has to be able to put together over 61 members of parliament out of 120.
Exactly. So that's the key thing. Whoever has the best chance in forming the government is the one who can get together the most number of Knesset members from different parties to amass the magic number of 61 or more. And if you can't get 61, then you can't do it. So even if you're the largest party and you can't do it, you're not the prime minister.
Who's the big surprise coming out of this election? Every election we have a big surprise. Last time it was Yair Lapid with 19 seats. The time before was the Pensioner Party. Who's on the slate this time?
I think that this time former Likud minister Moshe Kachlon is going to be the kingmaker of the elections. He's basically pitching the centrist with a focus on the socio-economic issues. He is someone who is widely acclaimed in Israel for breaking the monopoly of the communications field, and he broke down the monopoly of the cell phone carriers, bringing down charges massively, tens of percentages, if not more, scores of percentages. So everybody is looking to form a coalition with this new kingmaker, and he has signaled that he will join either government. but clearly he's going to be the kingmaker of the next election.
One of the big underlying stories is the fall of our foreign minister, Avigdor Lieberman, in the polls. According to the polls, he gets a dismal between 5 and 7 seats from the 13 he has now. What happened with him?
Basically, there's an ongoing corruption scandal which is plaguing his party. Now, it isn't about the foreign minister himself, but it's about key ministers in his party, including a former deputy minister who is under police investigation and who has been under arrest. Her family members have been under arrest. So for former Foreign Minister Lieberman, this spells bad news for his party. And as you say, polls are predicting that his power will be sliced in half.
Another person who's been hit really hard by the polls is the current finance minister, Yair Lapid. What happened to his party? Why is he so unpopular now?
Well, basically, he was the kingmaker of the last election. As you said, in every election there's always a kingmaker, and he had a great chance to prove himself. He became the second largest party in the Knesset last time, and yet, despite the 2 years that he had in office, he really didn't deliver on the goods, which is namely, for the Israeli people, bring down the high cost of living, especially the housing crisis, and he didn't deliver, so he's also going to suffer this election.
What are the main issues of the political election here? Like, what are the big political hot-button issues for this year's election?
So basically, as far as political issues, you have obviously the political diplomatic issues, the peace process, the ongoing, the never-ending crisis with the Palestinians, what's going to happen when they're taking the issue to the International Criminal Court in The Hague, the relations with America, the fact that it's been a very bumpy ride these past years with President Obama, despite the overwhelming support of the U.S. Congress, which has been strong and bipartisan. So you have together this international push against Israel, for boycotting Israel, and this push to go to the International Criminal Court by the Palestinians. And of course, the overwhelming security issue is, the ongoing crisis with Iran and their nuclear program, which continues to be the single largest, most difficult problem facing the state of Israel.
The peace process, is that really a fundamental issue of these elections? Because it's been going on for 20 years. No one really believes in it anymore. Is there a chance that there will be a person elected that would really push the peace process? With who even would they push it?
That's true. There's a severe problem with the peace process. The question of, is there a partner? Does a partner exist with the pact that the president of the Palestinian Authority made with the Hamas movement, joining a terror organization? So that's a huge dilemma. So it's basically more of an issue for this center-left party led by Labor and the former Justice Minister Tzipi Livni. They want to push the peace process. But for most of the people in Israel, they consider that currently there's no partner for peace.
Edgar, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
Well, I think that the fact that Israel goes to elections not only every 4 years, but even more frequently, just signals and drives home the point that this is the only democracy in the region. And it's not only the only democracy in the region, it's the only democracy in perhaps the toughest region in the world. And I think that it's an element of one should appreciate and look up to the fact that despite all the difficulties and all the problems and all the political parties, this is the one country in the region that does it democratically every couple of years.
Thank you, Edgar, for coming on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
The role of the Office of the Chief Scientist is to implement the government policies regarding innovation and research and development. The responsibility of the Office of the Chief Scientist covers all sectors of technology: communication, life sciences, food, plastics, agriculture, and internet. All are supported through our programs. Office of the Chief Scientist activates dozens of international collaboration programs between Israel and other countries worldwide. My role as Chief Scientist is to create the infrastructure for the ecosystem of innovation and help share the risk with the private sector to fulfill their potential.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
For I will take you from among the nations, gather you out of all countries, and bring you into your own land.
Over the past 35 years, the International Christian Embassy have been actively engaged in the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. More than 120,000 Jews have been helped by the Christian Embassy to come back from the four corners of the world here to the land of Israel. The main focal point was always the former Soviet Union, and the people which came to Israel were Russians or from the Ukraine or from Belarus. Today we see a major shift taking place where for the first time the majority of Jewish people which are coming to Israel do come from first world countries.
The Hebrew word aliyah refers to the immigration of Jews from the diaspora to the land of Israel. According to recent statistics published by the Jewish Agency for Israel, immigration to Israel continued to increase in 2014 by 32% overall. While Aliyah numbers from Western Europe were up 177% in 2014, France alone saw its Aliyah numbers increase by 289%.
I think that I can clearly tell you that there is a greater interest among French Jews to move to Israel, to make Aliyah, or to consider Aliyah. It is not an operation like an Aliyah operation like we saw from countries like Ethiopia or Russia after the Iron Curtain was lifted, but we see here a great interest, and I believe this is something that is going to grow in this coming year.
Ukraine is another European country that has seen a significant increase in Aliyah in 2014. A struggling economy and continued tensions with Russia have contributed to many Ukrainian Jews considering the idea of moving to Israel. Penina Zubarev and her family made Aliyah from Ukraine in 2009. For the Zubarev family, starting a new life in Israel was a challenge.
Now it's a lot of Ukrainian Jews think about to leave Ukraine because it's so difficult time now to make money, to care about family. If you decide to leave Ukraine, you lose your Ukrainian citizenship and all benefits.
There is something in the atmosphere that is uncomfortable in some places, and people think, what do I do next? And I'm happy that the Jewish people consider Israel, their homeland, as the best alternative. If I can send a message to the Christian friends of Israel around the world is, please do two things. One thing is donate. give the money that is necessary for the Israeli institutions to make the best way of Aliyah. And the second thing is to pray, because we need the prayers. We need to be in your hearts like we know we are already in, and we need to build this bridge of solidarity, working together for the fulfillment of the biblical prophecy.
As you have seen, we are living in a very special time of human history. God is opening a unique window of opportunity for the global body of Christ to actively be involved with the return of the Jewish people back to the land of Israel. Today, you personally can be involved with the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. You can help the Jewish people to return back to the land of their fathers, like the prophets of old foretold. Your donation and your prayer can make sure that the prophetic destiny of the Jewish people will become a reality today. So I want to invite you today to pray for the Aliyah of the Jewish people. Pray for the work of the Christian Embassy as we help the Jewish people to return back, but also consider making a generous gift in order to help us to return Jewish people from France, from the Ukraine, back to the land of Israel. We need your support, we need your prayers. May the Lord bless you richly out of Jerusalem.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rom.
And I'm Rebecca Rand, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us next week for all of your Israel updates.